Hello and welcome to this episode of Security Journal UK Leaders and Security podcast series. I'm the host, Millie Marshall-Loughran, and I'm the Deputy Editor of Security Journal UK. In this episode, I'm joined with Chris, the founder of DG Advisory. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Yes, very well. Thank you, Millie.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's great to have you here. So before we get into our discussion of the control rooms and operations, can you tell our listeners a bit more about yourself and your goal to transform mission-critical control rooms?
Absolutely. Pleasure to be with you. So, as you said, I'm the founder and managing director of DG Advisory. We are a specialist consulting firm that focuses purely on control rooms, command centers, operation centers, really with a mission to improve how they operate and perform. I'm also founder and vice chairman of ICRA, the International Critical Control Rooms Alliance, a professional organisation that brings together people across the spectrum of control rooms, both supply side and user side, to have interesting conversations and dialogues, share best practice. So really, my hobby and my work are combined to work around the control room industry. My background is policing, 15 years as a police officer, running control rooms and emergency contact centres, and really fell in love with that part of organisations. I find them the most fascinating bits of an organisation to be a part of.
Well, thank you so much for introducing yourself, Chris. So into the questions now. What are the biggest opportunities you see in integrating AI into control room operations?
So I'll talk about two aspects, the sort of use cases that we see AI could be used for, and then the impact that those can have. And I think important that in my approach to control rooms, it's always very holistic. So I look at technology, I look at people, I look at the physical space, the environment, as well as the processes. When it comes to AI, I think there are four areas that are particularly interesting for control rooms. The first is around really filtering out noise. And if we imagine a control room that's got lots of alarms going, lots of alerts happening, some of those are going to be false alarms. And one of the impacts of that is this sort of weariness of operators to false alarms. So we can use AI to filter out what's really noise versus what's important for an operator to look at. The other aspect is around data. We've got control rooms now that have this huge influx of data from different systems, whether it's a building management system, CCTV, just the vast array of technologies and connected devices that we have within organizations. And it's becoming really just humanly impossible to consume that amount of data in a way that is useful operationally. So what can AI do? Well, it can consume it for us. It can make sort of summaries of it. It can get some understanding of what all that data means and present it to an operator in a way which is much more useful, allows them to make decisions, to understand current situational awareness of business as usual, as well as incidents that they might have going on. The third area is around prediction. We want to, as best we can, take action that avoids moving into a problem or an incident area. And so we can use data to help predict what might be coming down the line. But again, because we've got this massive data, use of AI, use of automation technologies allows us to really do that analysis quickly and well, so that we can then plan ahead and we can sort of understand perhaps the amount of demand we might have coming into a control room, so we can schedule better the number of operators that we've got. And then the last bit, which I think is perhaps listeners will sort of see as perhaps the most sort of frontline perhaps use of AI, and that's around anomaly detection. If we take the example of a control room that's monitoring CCTV, perhaps as one of the many technologies that they are monitoring, we now have such a vast number of CCTV cameras generally coming in, and I speak to clients that are very proud to have 400, 500, 1,000 cameras within their estate. It's not possible for an individual operator, even a team of operators, to be constantly monitoring those and to understand and detect the threat that might be coming or the risks that are popping up. So when you're not viewing an image or a camera feed, well, who's doing the monitoring? And the obvious choice now is that we have AI technologies that allow us to do that and that can detect something that's not quite going right and present it to the operator and say, well, have a look at this. But importantly, presenting it in context. So if we've got something happening on CCTV, perhaps the technology is presenting that to the operator along with the relevant access control element that goes along with where that CCTV is covering, along with perhaps the ability to look forward, look backwards over a particular time frame, or whatever other context is coming in. So it's sort of bringing almost this package to the operator to say, look, have a look at this, rather than these individual alerts that we get now in very siloed technologies. So what's the impact of all that? Well, better operations, however you want to define better, but being able to detect things early, being better prepared because we've got a much clearer situational awareness of the context that we're operating in. From a human point of view, we're reducing fatigue, reducing that alert fatigue of that alarm always goes off, so I'm just going to cancel it without really checking, or just the fatigue of built up data overload, this cognitive overload that drives us to making poorer decisions because we can't process the information in the time that we've got. But it also releases the operator to focus on the high value work where really human judgment is required, where the ability to make decisions and to coordinate comes in. So I think we're trying to use technology to resolve a lot of these problems around data overload and too much data and being able to process it quickly. But what the impact really is just this slicker operation, the ability to release the human, the operator, to be able to do the work that really only they can do.
I mean, yeah, like you touched on, I think there's a really big emphasis at the moment on AI sort of taking over human processes, but it's not. AI is easing human processes and helping people to not get fatigued by alerts, I suppose. So yeah, like you said, like focusing on the real issues at hand. So thank you.
And I think importantly, though, it's not replacing the human, right? We do hear a lot about AI replacing humans and we're going to lose our jobs. That's not really what it's about. Jobs might change, right? So maybe I'm not staring at a big video wall of CCTV anymore, but actually what I'm doing is keeping the human in the loop, but giving them the work that they need to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I did an article the other day and it was talking about how AI won't steal your jobs, but the people that can use AI will.
Yes.
Because it's about utilising the tools that are there to assist you to do your own work. At this point, I suppose AI is not that technologically advanced to be taking over your jobs, but I suppose it is good for assistance. We all know that. It's really good at helping us do tasks that we already do just at a quicker rate and more efficient way. So why wouldn't you use it,
Absolutely that.
So just off the back of that then, what does breaking down silos look like in practice in developing integrated operation centres?
Yes, so I talk about this concept of integrated operations centres or integrated command centre approach quite often. If we look traditionally, and personally I work mainly around the sort of security safety area, But if we look at control rooms traditionally, they are single department, single function. But incidents that need managing require teamwork, right? They require people with different skills to be involved in order to best resolve an incident. And really, control rooms, that's what they're there for. They're there to manage risk within an organisation, both detecting and preventing and helping prevent, but also managing things when operations don't go particularly well. So the idea of breaking down silos and integrating is that we bring together different functions within an organisation to sit within the control room, the command centre, the operations centre, so that when both in business as usual, but when we're having critical incidents, we are better linked together to resolve whatever that incident is. Now, this doesn't mean just popping everyone in the same room, right? It's not just about co-location. That is an important feature, although technology allows us to work remotely. More importantly, it's about integrating how we work together. So making sure that we've got data, we've got situational awareness that is shared, perhaps using the same platforms and systems together. That might be with different privileges and being able to do different things, but essentially bringing everything together that allows us to have this sort of single source of truth that everybody is working from, so that when we have to make decisions, we're making them from the same pool of information, and that we've got this decision-making protocol that is common between the different departments. Important in this, it's really testing and exercising how that works. So great that we might have some shared systems, and that security and maintenance and car park operations and whoever else are all integrated within this centre. But we need to exercise how that works in practice, so that when it comes to a big event, something going wrong, or even, as I said, the day-to-day smaller incidents that we tend to deal with, everybody knows their role. Everybody knows what different departments can bring to resolving an incident, or who might have the best understanding of a particular problem, or able to decipher particular information and data correctly. So this integration I see more and more when I speak to clients. This both in practice, but a desire to bring teams together, different teams together within organizations. And the starting point tends to be something didn't go well. And in the debrief of an incident, actually the thing that we've picked up is this department didn't talk to that department, or weren't as reactive, or we didn't have the same base information to base decisions on. So I think this is a trend that is going to continue to grow as organizations become more complex, and that's everything from how we manage big entertainment venues, to commercial multi-tenant buildings, to shopping malls. All of these areas, the operations of these areas are becoming more complicated and more integrated in how people use them. If we think about our journey through an airport, for example, right, from parking your car to getting on the flight, you're passing through quite a lot of departments, from parking operations to check-in to luggage to boarding and security, etc. So one of the best, and I use that example because one of the best operational examples of integration that I've seen is Heathrow Airport, that went from dozens and dozens of small little control rooms controlling a particular function, to bringing that together into an airport operations centre where people are working much more collaboratively. I'd encourage people, if you can, to go and visit, but it shows that it works and that it allows us to resolve incidents better, faster, with the right information in mind.
Okay, so I know we touched on this a little bit in question 1, but this is the third question. So human performance is central in high-stake environments. How can control room design better support operator well-being?
All right, so operator well-being, I think, is one of the themes that gets missed out very, very often when we're designing, redesigning control rooms, operating control rooms. For all the technology we've got, control rooms, command centers don't work without the human, without the operator. They are the one who brings everything together, can make decisions, helps to coordinate. And they are stressful environments by the nature of what they are dealing with. Different control rooms in different contexts are managing different levels of risk. And of course, perhaps a police control room is slightly more stressful than the control room in a shopping mall, perhaps. That being said, for the operator, what we want is for them to come to work and be in the best frame of mind to be able to deliver the operations that they're being asked to deliver. So there are things that we can do in the design of a control room, in the operation of a control room, that allows us to help colleagues to come to work and be their best. And the first is to have an understanding of what it is we're asking them to deliver. What is the operational context? What are the tasks they're being asked to do? And in designing then processes and the wider operations, to design with the human in mind, not with the technology, not with the data. Those are important things, but it's the human that's enacting these processes. So that initial design piece, I think, is really important. The human is at the center of it. There are technologies now to monitor fatigue, both as you come into work and throughout the shift. How we design the environment impacts on fatigue and stress and resilience to stress. For example, lighting, air conditioning, are really important factors in how an operator, if you like, lives through their shift. Often we're seeing now 12-hour shifts, which are not ideal, but therefore we need to put interventions around that to help support. Things like quiet spaces and being able to remove yourself from a situation, take a bit of time to reset before you come back to the console and continue working. So in the physical design of space, there are things that we can do to support. In training, what I don't see enough of, one of the services we offer is we audit control rooms. And one of the things that we don't see enough of is resilience training. So preparing staff and giving them the tools to be more resilient over time, so that when an incident happens, they're better able and better equipped to deal with it from a personal resilience point of view. These are tools that need to be taught and that need to be practiced in the downtimes, in the quiet times. We often talk to clients about shift design and shift pattern design. There are certain designs and of shift patterns that are better for the operator and their well-being. Of course, that needs to be balanced with the need to have enough staff and deliver operations. But often it's the need for staff and the need for operations that drives the shift pattern rather than finding this balance. And the last bit I would probably mention here is culture. The culture has a huge impact on how staff engage with operations, how they engage with their work, whether they are confident to speak up when something is not going wrong, the concept of psychological safety at work. And in critical environments where things don't always go well, we want staff to be able to say, here's a problem that we need to fix now. I've got some ideas, but I'm highlighting this problem. Let's fix it before it becomes an issue. or during an incident saying, actually, I don't think that's quite right. We've forgotten to take into account this information, for example, which might well change the decisions we make. So fostering a culture that is supportive, collaborative, psychologically safe has a big impact on the success of operations, but also on the stress, the anxiety, and the pressure that goes on to staff. So if we want teams that are resilient, that stay with us because they enjoy working in that environment, that grow and that learn, then culture and the interventions we put around them are really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, control rooms are like multitasking at another level. There's so much to look at and understand. It must be really hard to maintain that concentration and get so fatigued by just, consuming all this information. So I was actually talking to a company recently, they're a surveillance company, and they were talking about a school that they went to set up surveillance cameras. And I think they said that there was around 270 cameras set up already from different companies that weren't linked up properly to the control room. So they would be referencing camera 1 and they didn't actually know where that was on premise. So if there's an incident, how do you track it? So, to a certain extent, what's the point of having the surveillance system if you can't use it effectively?
Absolutely. And that's back to the point I made at the start around design, right? So if we understand the task and understand what it is that we want people to do, in that case, you're monitoring CCTV, great, there are lots of cameras, fine, that's very usual. But the design within the control room of how these feeds come together, what do you want the operator to do with them? What action should they take? If there's an alert on a particular place, how do they then go and find that camera in a way that is quick and intuitive, rather than actually increasing the task load by saying you need to search through not just one camera set but lots of them because we haven't named them properly, or they're not visually on a map, or they're not integrated because they're from different providers. All of those things add to cognitive load, they add to stress, they increase fatigue. Fatigue is perhaps a whole episode that we could talk about fatigue, but there's fatigue because I haven't slept well enough and I'm not getting enough sleep, but there's also fatigue based on task, right? So if I'm just doing very low effort administrative work, I can probably sustain that for much longer than this very intense, focused, multifunctional work we're asking control room operators to do. So my sort of level of fatigue builds much quicker in those sorts of environments. If we design in the right way, we slow that down, right? We want operators to be successful, I hope, right? So we should be investing in how we design. And I would say it's not unusual when we speak to clients that their security systems providers have come in and given great advice about CCTV and the physical security measures. But often what's not thought about is, where does all that go? Right? Where does all that go, and who's looking at it, and what are they doing with it? And maybe I've got a different provider for CCTV to access control and the alarms, and therefore I've got two computers, right, doing two different things, and an operator that's got to work across both. So the control room, often because it's tucked away, we don't really see it, it's a bit behind the scenes, we're not really thinking about how it's designed, and that's what we help organizations with. But it's a really crucial place, because your investment in security systems, you're not going to get the best out of it if your control room hasn't been optimized and designed in a way that allows you to maximize the technologies you've got.
Thank you. That actually leads really nicely into our next question. So talk about going in beyond ergonomics. What's some of the overlooked human factors that need more attention in control rooms?
So we're quite used to now, in most control rooms I visit, understanding the importance of a good chair, a 24/7 ergonomic chair that is designed for people to be sitting for long periods of time. We're quite used to consoles that are sit-stand, that allow people to sort of continue their work but change position. When I talk about beyond ergonomics, what I'm talking about really is not just the furniture. it's all the bit of the environment that need to come together. I alluded to it a little bit earlier. So, we were just talking really about cognitive ergonomics just now, about how dashboards and interfaces are designed, about how systems are integrated together to give the operator the best information in the best way, understanding how many clicks it takes to do a particular task, and designing technologies that reduce the cognitive load and the effort that an operator needs to do in order to do that task. So there's this design, this ergonomics, that is not just about furniture, but is about how we think and the interaction between human and technology. There's also the environmental factors that are around lighting, acoustics, air quality, air conditioning and ventilation, recovery spaces that I mentioned before. All of these impact on human performance. So if we take lighting, most control rooms I go into have very standard office lighting. And office lighting is designed to be bright. It's designed for people to walk around without bumping into things. It's not designed to interact with big video walls that already are emitting a fair amount of light. It's not designed for detailed work at a console where you've got your personal workspace and maybe a number of monitors there. So we need to think about how lighting is designed for best effect and the impact on people's eyesight and health. But there is an element of lighting that helps us to maintain our circadian rhythm, how we go through the day, the natural rhythm of becoming tired and then recovering when we sleep. A lot of that is controlled by light, sunlight. But when we're in a room for large periods of time, 12 hours, say, on a shift, and we're not outside in the sunlight and in the natural daylight, actually we need to think about how we design lighting to replicate some of that, or to help boost people when we know that naturally they're going to be tired at particular points in the shift. Same with acoustics, right? If I'm listening to a radio or if I'm taking phone calls, I need to be able to hear those quite clearly. What I don't want is a whole load of background noise, not necessarily from other operators, but generally from machinery, right? If I've got a big server stuck in the corner that's whirring away, because that needs ventilation as well, that's causing this background noise that makes it harder for me to hear. It means I need to concentrate more. It means I get fatigued quicker. So all these little bits of the environment need to be thought about so that when they come together, we're producing the most optimum conditions for people to working and to operate in these critical environments. And then the last bit about beyond ergonomics I mentioned before really is culture. The ergonomics of interacting people to people. And again, these are things that can be thought out and designed ahead of time. It's, what's your leadership culture? Is it quite inclusive? Are you bringing staff on transformation journeys if you're doing any kind of change? What's the feedback loop? Do they have a voice in debriefing incidents, for example? Do they feel empowered to make recommendations? All of those things that falls within that sort of cultural ergonomics really also enable great performance. So what I encourage people to do is think about ergonomics beyond just the furniture and moving into these other areas, the environmental, the cultural, and that sort of cognitive human technology ergonomics.
It's actually really interesting that you bring that up as a point of contention, because actually in your personal home you would consider things like lighting and background noises, the TV or radiators or air conditioning, but actually you don't necessarily consider it when you're in a work environment. But I can only imagine how distracting that must be when you're trying to hone in and maintain concentration over extended periods of times. Those background noises and the lighting really do distract you from your work.
Absolutely, and of course you do need air conditioning, right? You do, um, but again, you need to, especially if you've got sort of big video walls, right? They emit a lot of heat. Um, so again, thinking about the physical design of the room, how close to the video wall are your staff, right? How close is the console? Because then they're going to be impacted by the heat. Okay, well, what about the air conditioning that's cooling down the room to a temperature that allows you to concentrate and to be not too cold, not too hot, right? But allows you to concentrate on your work. If that's a system that's producing lots of noise, that's going to be counterproductive. So all of these things, it's about designing all of these things together. They all interact, and it's one of the things that makes control room design such a complex discipline, really, because you need to think about all these different factors all together and how they interact.
Thank you so much. It's really interesting to see kind of the design aspect to a control room, and sort of the outside perspectives that you would never really know about if you wasn't in that environment. So again, thank you. So our final question is, so what's one thing organisations could start doing today to future-proof their control room strategy?
So I'd say start by understand what is working well and what isn't. I mentioned before, one of the services we offer is to audit control rooms, and that's really what we do. We look at 65 different capabilities across the whole of control rooms in a very holistic way. But that is so that clients can understand where are they strong and where they're not so strong, and then focus improvement effort on the bits where they're not so strong. It's not always about scrap what we've got, redesign everything, start again. But you need to have that awareness and that understanding. The other area to think about is your technology supporting staff or hindering them? Have I kept my technology up to date? I mean, I speak to technology vendors very frequently, and one of their sort of bugbears is that clients don't maintain the current versions of the things that they've got, right? So the vendor has invested a lot in new functionality and new tools and etc. But if you're not upgrading, keeping up to date with your sort of versions, you're not benefiting from that. So, A, are you up to date? B, have you looked at how your technologies interact and come together? And again, designing that in a way that supports the operator. If I've got to go from my one computer that's got CCTV, run across the room to a fire panel, and then come back to a different desk that has the access control computer, that's not helping me do my job well. So have a look at that. Those are easy things to kind of look at and pick out, and then talk to people like us, like your security system provider, and say, oh, what could we do? How could we improve this? And then the last bit is to think about the human and think about the operator, and look at the environment that they're in, and really sort of make this assessment of, have I given them the best conditions to deliver their job? Majority of people I meet when I interview operators during audits, they don't come to work to not do a good job, right? They want to deliver, they want to perform well. Some are extremely passionate about the protection they bring to the organizations that they're working in. So give them the tools to do that, give them the environment to do that, whether that's training, whether it's regular exercising, whether it's the physical environment or the technology. But if we don't, we're sort of hampering them to do a really good job. So I think those three things: understand where you are now, think about your technology and where it's at, and are you getting the best out of it, and then think about your people. Are you providing the best environment for the people that are there? If you're the last bit I'd say is, if you're minded to make change, and I mentioned earlier, one of the trends that we're seeing is this integration of different functions. The other is centralization of control rooms. So organizations that have lots of little operation centers but are coming together into something a bit more corporate or high level. All those things fundamentally change how you operate. So it's not just about building a different room or bring technology together. You need to think about it as a whole. So I'd really strongly encourage, if that's the direction organizations are going in, think about the operating model. Start with how do people, process, technology, the physical environment interact together? What do you want to deliver that is different to now? Design that first before you then move on to technology design, physical room design, and all the considerations that you've got there. You know, our sort of USP is we start with the operating model before we do anything else. That's the bit that's going to answer all the difficult questions down the line. So I think I encourage people to think about those 4 things, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for speaking today. It's been really fascinating getting to know you and your role and control rooms.
Millie, thank you so much for having me on. Just for listeners, I mentioned in my introduction ICRA, the International Critical Control Room Alliance. You know, we're an association that's bringing together control room professionals from across sectors globally to really share best practice, to have discussions about some of the challenges. Our conference this year is going to be in Madrid, 9th to the 11th of December. The theme for this year is People First, Stronger Teams, Better Outcomes. We're going to focus really on the people aspect, although still bringing in technology, processes, and the environment as well. 3 days of, I think, really exciting content, control room visits, workshops as well. So if listeners are interested in attending, they can go to criticalcontrol.org and get all the details there. And the last event I'll mention is that ICRA is hosting a new control room innovation theatre at Intersec in Dubai in January, a 1-day event within the wider Intersec show, and that will be, again, some really great speakers from across the region talking about the key topics impacting on control rooms and command centres. So hopefully I'll see some of the listeners there.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Chris, on this episode. And thanks to our listeners for tuning into SJUK Leaders in Security podcast series. I've been your host, Millie Marshall-Loughran. Make sure to keep an eye out for our next episode coming soon. Thank you.